Welcome to the Astrology Hub podcast. I'm Amanda Poole-Walsh, founder of Astrology Hub and your host for our flagship show. We explore the many ways astrology can support you in your relationships, career, health, and personal growth. Thanks for tuning in.
This podcast episode is brought to you by The Inner Circle, your place to learn astrology in community with the masters and transform your life in the process.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Astrology Hub podcast. My name is Amanda Poole-Walsh, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you today. This is a long-awaited episode. I have been wanting to have Joni Patry on this show for a very, very long time. I love her YouTube channel. I love her approach to astrology. And as the Astrology Hub, even though we haven't featured Vedic astrology that much, I would actually love to be featuring it more because we are a hub. And so this is about many different perspectives, many different approaches to astrology. And maybe some of you who have practiced Western will decide that you want to look more into Vedic after this, and vice versa. That can happen too. So I'm really excited for Joni's debut here on the Astrology Hub podcast. And today we are going to be focusing on all things Vedic astrology and getting into this question about what is the difference? Is one more accurate than the other? We're going to hear Joni's story and how she came to actually practice Vedic astrology after being a Western astrologer at first, and all kinds of great stuff. So thank you all for being here. And Joni, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, we are too. And Joni is a Vedic Sidereal astrologer. She is one of the most recognized teachers and Vedic astrologers in the world. I'd say you're like a Vedic astrology YouTube darling. You have a huge YouTube channel and following. And she's also been an instructor for online certification programs, published many books, journals, and appeared on national and international television shows. And I'm going to let her tell more about her story here. So Joni, tell us about this journey that you've had to being where you're at right now, how you started with Western and got into Vedic. Would love to hear more about that.
Okay, sure. Well, my mother had astrology books all over the house. And so when I was a little girl, I would pick them up because we were both the same Western sun sign. And even, when I was like 12 and 13, in junior high school, I always want to know what all the boys' signs were and how it worked together. Remember Linda Goodman's sun signs?
Oh, yeah.
That totally resonated with me. And back when I started, we had to calculate the charts. I found an astrology teacher at the university I went to. I went to the University of Texas in Austin, and it was during the hippie days, and I found a great Western astrologer that really taught us how to calculate charts, use the ephemeris, the logarithms, all of that. So I've been doing astrology, I don't even like to say, for over 40 years. And it's just my passion. I love it. I've never lost my passion. And since computers came around, it made it a whole lot simpler. But it wasn't until the early 90s, I was looking for something that was more predictive. And here's what I feel about Western astrology. It's a tropical system based on the sun, so it's more about the solar energy and the seasons. We know every single spring we're going to have a change of seasons. If you're in the northern or southern hemisphere, of course, your seasons change at the solstice and the equinox times. So that's never going to change. And that's based on the sun. So I feel like Western astrology is totally correct in terms of our sun sign. And that's why we all appreciate and connect with the sun sign astrology. Where's your sun? And when you switch to Vedic, you lose that sun sign many times, and people are going, this can't be possible. I am a Scorpio. How could I fall back into Libra? I have all the qualities of Scorpio, not Libra. So I feel like Western astrology is perfect for psychological analysis when we're looking at our psychology of who we are. And that's very much part of the Western culture, psychology, and that we, how we can change and change our lives. Yes, I got a degree in psychology as well. Love really helping people understand their lives and who they are, and most of all, changing and healing their lives if they're not happy. Astrology does that, whether you're doing Western or Vedic. But Vedic, they kept saying, had more predictive tendencies and that it was spiritually based. So the big difference in Vedic and Western is Vedic is a lunar-based system, where Western is a solar-based system. And you see, being a lunar-based system, where the moon is in your chart is so important. In the Vedic chart, it's your emotions, it's your mind, it's your consciousness is really what it is. But we have a predictive tool with Vedic called the Doshas, and it is actually based on where your natal moon is. And it really does give the lineup of how your life is going to unfold. But just to make a long story short, I've been into astrology as long as I can remember, and been actually a teacher and practicing astrologer really since the 70s. So
Wow, Joni, amazing. So do you flip-flop between systems based on what the client needs, or are you basically settled on the Vedic system at this point?
I used to. When I first started getting into Vedic, I would have the Western charts with the Vedic chart side by side. And of course, I would look at the progressions of the Western chart, and I would look at the Doshas from the Vedic chart. But over time, I kind of edged out the Western chart because it was time consuming to do both charts.
Yeah.
And I came to a point where I didn't need the Western chart anymore. Most of my people want to know their future. So that's what it gives them.
Okay. Question also, when you're talking about it being a lunar-based system, and where the moon is in your chart, that's ruling your emotions and your mind and your consciousness. Is it the same moon sign as it is in Western astrology, or does that actually change?
Yes. So let me explain the change and why it happens. So basically, the whole zodiac has moved backwards. This is because of precession of the equinoxes. It's moved backwards. 2,000 years ago, actually, the zodiacs lined up. But because the stars, Vedic astrology is based on the stars. I call it, when you talk about sidereal means star. So the stars are constantly moving, very slowly though. And over a course of 2,000 years, when the zodiacs were aligned, now they're off by the stars. The star groupings are moving, and they move backwards in the zodiac. And actually, when you say we're moving into the age of Aquarius, that is what you're talking about. The sidereal, the stars changing and moving backwards. So over this 2,000-year period, at this point, really the starting position of the zodiac in Vedic is in Pisces. And Western astrology always looks at the starting position of the zodiac as 0 Aries. But now it's moved backwards about 24 degrees. So that's the difference you're going to have from your Western chart to your Vedic chart, 24 degrees backwards in the Vedic from where your Western placements are. So your ascendant and all your planets have moved backwards because they're in different star groupings because of where the stars have moved to. And one of the things that really kind of, I say it's true to the stars, because when you talk about your fixed stars, whether Regulus is in Leo or Virgo, it's the heart of the lion. How on earth can you say Regulus is in Virgo? It's in Leo. So you say so the stars are true to the constellations. They're moving, and therefore they stay in those, like Antares is the heart of the Scorpion. It's going to be in Scorpio, not in Sagittarius. So the star groupings as they're moving are constant, but your planets will be in different star groupings, which constitute the signs or constellations. So the signs, which basically, not exactly, but the signs are because of the stars, right? So the stars are what are changing or moving, that movement. So basically, the fixed stars, they're not really fixed, they're moving. But the reason why they're called fixed is they move so slow. They move 1 degree backwards in the zodiac every 72 years. And that's what this precessional process has brought us to from 2,000 years ago to where we are right now. And therefore, because according to Lahiri, Sidereal, I see the beginning of the zodiac around 6 degrees of Pisces. Remember, it's moving backwards. So in 72 years, it'll be 5 degrees Pisces. Another 72 years, it'll be 4 degrees Pisces. So what's happening, it's moving backwards and it's moving towards Aquarius. And I find it very interesting that Western astrologers talk about moving into the age of Aquarius as well. But this is what it's based on.
Wow, it's a lot to wrap your head around when you've been in the Western astrology lens for a long time.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is anything that you have at 24 degrees or higher is going to stay in the same sign.
You got it.
Anything lower than that is going to shift back one sign.
Exactly.
And one question I have, like so much of Western astrology, especially the interpretation itself, is based on the seasons, the equinox and the solstice. So 0 Aries is in an initiating energy because it's the beginning of the equinox. Right. So, or the beginning of the year astrologically. So in Vedic astrology, does Pisces still have the same qualities, or does Pisces then become the initiator since it's the beginning of the year?
Well, because it's moving backwards, you're not going to have it in the same place. Okay. So a lot of people, they think, here's what I'll get a lot of time. Oh, okay. So I'm Libra in the Vedic, and then they'll start comparing their chart to other people's charts, but they didn't shift theirs backwards as well.
Yeah.
But everything goes back. And here's something to ponder. These are the true placements according to astronomy and astronomers. If you take your phone out and you use your sky watch and look up at the stars at night, these are going to be the placements that we're using. So they're astronomically correct. And that was another reason why I thought, I think I need to learn what this is all about, if this is really where the planets are relative to the constellations and stars.
Mm-hmm. So Joni, have you found that in terms of prediction, Vedic astrology is more accurate and is a tool that provides more insights than Western astrology when it comes to prediction? I
have. And one of the reasons why is, of course, your whole chart is going to be of different signs. And, a lot of people go, but that doesn't fit me. Now, I'm talking to people that understand astrology in this group right now. Mm-hmm. So there's other reasons why maybe if your sign leaves Scorpio, you know as well as I do, Mercury and Venus are always really close to the sun. So you're going to have your Mercury's how you think, maybe in Scorpio, but your sun falls back to Libra. There'll be other planetary reasons, the other planets being maybe in the sign that you thought your sun was in, as well as if somebody has a real strong Scorpio energy. What if they have 4 planets in the 8th house? That will give off Scorpio energy because, the 8th house is relative to the 8th sign. Scorpio has all that energy, or even Pluto. So there's always a reason why maybe your sun sign that changes doesn't fit in Vedic. So what I'm talking about is I ask people, look at the whole chart. It's a map. Where are all the planets placed? And the one thing that I found was so truly accurate with Vedic was Well, you see, first of all, we don't use the outer planets as chart rulers. I mean, as house rulers, excuse me, or they don't rule the planets. But I absolutely think they're imperative to use. So if you have Pluto conjunct your sun, hey, you'll be very Scorpio, right? There's going to be that really strong influence on the sun. When you have an outer planet conjunct a personal planet, it influences it incredibly.
Mhm.
But what I'm trying to say is we use the old rulership. So in other words, Jupiter rules Pisces, Mars rules Scorpio, and Saturn rules Aquarius. Now that's kind of a hard one to take in because we think of, Aquarians so Uranian. They are. I agree with that. But when we're talking about prediction, letting aside all of our personality awareness, set that aside and just look at, when you're looking at a chart, the ruler of the first house, whatever it is in Sidereal Vedic astrology, the house that goes to will really tell you what your interests are throughout your life. So you're going to have different house rulers because everything moves backwards. You see, your ascendant's going to move backwards. Therefore, if your ascendant was Cancer in Western, it's going to move back to Gemini, and that's in Western, my ascendant is Cancer or tropical. But it moved back to Gemini, and I was thinking, how can that be? I thought of myself as a family person, very sensitive, very feeling, overly emotional. But truly, I'm a Gemini rising in Vedic because I write books, I travel throughout the world, I was a flight attendant. I mean, that's Gemini. So you've got to really open your mind as to what this really can truly entail about who you are and your sole purpose. But it's like, as I was talking about, the ruler of the first, what house it goes to will be your interest throughout life. The ruler of the second, wherever it goes, will be how you make your money. The ruler of the third will tell you so much about how you communicate in accordance to what house it sits in. So what I'm trying to say, when I did Western astrology, the aspects worked beautifully, especially with the timing of transits. But you're going to have the same aspects because when you look at your transits, all your planets go back 24 degrees, right? Well, so did the transiting planets. So if you have Jupiter conjunct your sun, transiting Jupiter conjunct your sun, it's going to be in Vedic and Western at the same time. So you don't lose your transits. That was unfortunate when I saw Saturn coming to my sun. I thought when I first got into Vedic that was going to change, but no, the transits are the same. And therefore, Western astrology works. But I found that the house rulerships of Vedic worked so much better. And the predictive tools that you're asking about that I feel like are uncanny are the Doshas, because the Dasha sequence, now this takes into account the other layer that people look at. And when I first looked at it, I thought, I am never going to learn all this, especially the Sanskrit words. Well, in my university, I don't get hung up on this, calling Mercury Buddha or, Mars Ruchaka. I really pretty much stay with the Western terminology. Mars is Mars, Mercury is Mercury, and I don't get so caught up because I feel like I want to teach people how to be astrologers. And what that means is you're going to talk to your clients in their language and explain to them what it means, not get all caught up with all the, that in and of itself, it almost, made me not learn Vedic. But aside from all of that, the Doshas are based on the 27 Nakshatras. And when you think, oh my God, I got to learn 27. First, I just got through learning about the 12 houses, the 12 planets, and the signs. And here you're going to ask people to understand and know the whole mythology and the rhyme and reason behind the Nakshatras. Now, the Nakshatras are what truly make Vedic astrology. So you see, you can have a sidereal astrologer And they will just use the sidereal system where everything falls backwards, but they're not using the nakshatras. Nakshatras are the Indian base of it. And here's what the nakshatras are. When you take the 360-degree zodiac and you divide it up into portions of 13 degrees, 20 minutes, you will get 27 nakshatras. So they're smaller portions of the zodiac. And truly what gives those nakshatras their definitions and meanings are the groupings of stars in each nakshatra. So they're more specific, and they're also ruled by planets. So your natal moon, the reason why the whole process is based on your natal moon, it's where your natal moon is, what sign, but what nakshatra your natal moon is in. The planet that rules that nakshatra will start your whole life cycles out. And there's a pattern that, after K2 comes Venus and so on. There's a pattern. So if you start your whole life cycle out, let's say in Jupiter, well, then after Jupiter always comes Saturn. After Saturn always comes Mercury. So you're starting your life out. And of course, the way that those planets are placed in your chart, in other words, if you start your Saturn Dasha, okay, let's say you start your Saturn Dasha and you're 30 years old when you do. And your Saturn sits in the 10th house. Guess what that Saturn Dasha is going to bring you? Career success and karma and change, because you go into that dasha. But what starts the whole cyclic process is your natal moon, and then that pattern changes, and it actually gives you an account for 120 years, the whole dasha sequence. Now, of course, I don't know very many people live to 120, but that kind of tells me that we were supposed to live for these longer durations of time. I just think from all the stress and the way we eat and live our lives, of course we don't. But that is the length of time of the entire dasha system. Now, what also makes Vedic astrology so confusing is they have more than one dasha system. I tell people, no, just basically look at the Vimshotri dasha system. It's the main one that we all use. But some people can confuse it, say, look at Chara dasha, look at Yogini dasha. Stop. That's way too complicated. There's too many things to look at. But also the definition of like what that nakshatra means, like the psychology of it, Vedic astrologers don't really look at that, but I do, because I was raised a Western astrologer. I've got a degree in psychology. Of course, I'm going to look at the psychology of what those nakshatras mean. And they do have myths that relate to their psychology. So you're looking at the mythology, you're looking at the planet that rules that nakshatra, and you're looking at the star groupings, what they represent, such as in Leo, the first 13 degrees, 20 minutes of the fire sign Leo is Maga. And Maga represents what? Kings. And within that nakshatra is the fixed star Regulus. So you're going to find that every definition around Maga is going to be what you consider the definition of Leo is. Okay. So, but then in the second portion, of Leo, from 13 degrees 20 minutes to the next 13 degrees 20 minutes will be Purva Falguni. And people with this nakshatra are usually in the performing arts. They're very expressive. And, Leo, as the fifth sign, relates to the fifth house, is very creative and expressive. So I always look to the number of the signs, the houses, they're all interrelated. And I did that as well in Western astrology. But I have to say Vedic astrology takes it deeper with the dashas. Now, Vedic astrology also, of course, uses the transits. And what I find is very specific is it helps you focus in on what's important when you're trying to make a prediction, such as if you're in Saturn's Mahadasha, That's the grand cycle. And also we look at a sub-cycle. Actually, there's 7 cycles. I say forget it. That's too much. You've got to focus in on just the 2 cycles, how those 2 planets are placed, how those planets are placed from one another even. And once you can decipher what houses they rule, what houses they're in, and their relationship to each other, you can really get some deep meanings of what's going to be happening in that person's life. But if you're in Saturn's Mahadasha, guess what transit you want to look at more powerfully than any of the others? The transit of Saturn. So whatever dasha you're in, those transiting planets as well as those natal planets will play out much more powerfully than the other planets.
Joni, it's amazing to me. I mean, this is a whole nother system. It seems like the way that you did this, where you got a certain level of mastery on one system, which for you was Western astrology. You got to a certain level of mastery of that. So you understood how that zodiac worked. You understood, all the transits and all the energies. And then you went and started to learn Vedic. I can imagine many people in the audience who are still just trying to figure out the Western system going, oh my God, what? There's like this whole other thing. It's lunar based. And I can see how it could be like overwhelming and confusing. Would you say that that's a great way to do it, to choose one to really get a certain level of mastery on, and then from that foundational place, go and dabble and see what you think about another system?
Exactly. But here's something I always say. So many students, because I went around the country and taught Vedic astrology to all the Western groups. Mm-hmm. And so many times, well, all the time really, and I did it too, you say, yeah, but my Western placements are here. So what I find Western astrologers try to do, they try to fit the Vedic system into their Western astrology. You can't do that. It's a separate, complete system. You can't make Vedic Western and you can't make Western Vedic. So in other words, you've got to figure out that these are 2 separate systems. But one thing that does overlap that I think is helpful for those that already do know Western astrology is the house meanings will be the same, except in Vedic you have a lot more. And that was amazing to me. And when I saw all the new meanings to the houses, and that's what I used to go teach Western astrologers, because you can take these meanings and use them in Western astrology. But what I found was when you're looking at these new meanings to the houses, I was overwhelmed. There were so many more, but it makes so much more sense, such as, well, the first house, as you well know, is the self, is the physical body. It's also, and this is Western too, it's your entrance into the world. So it deals with the head. We're usually born head first, right? But the second house, we look at it as our self-esteem. We look at it as money, wealth, those things. But did you know that the second house also deals with early childhood experiences? And I think that's because that's going to develop our sense of self-worth, who we think we are, as well as if you have a really strong sense of worth, you're going to be able to make a lot of money rather than if you feel worthless. So this is money. Early childhood experiences really does determine your sense of self and who you are. Plus, it's also the voice. If you consider when you're going in, medical astrology, the first house is the head. The second house is the face and the throat. So therefore, it is your voice. It's what you say. It's actually what comes out of your mouth, such as your voice. And I remember Julie Andrews had like these beautiful Jupiter moon and benefics in the second house. That's the voice. So it's such a beautiful voice. And the other thing it is what goes into the mouth as well as what comes out. And so it can deal with eating disorders. And I believe in my book on Pluto, I talk about people that have these eating disorders. Karen Carpenter, who died from anorexia, she had, I think, Pluto moon or Pluto with the sun in the second house, representing her control issues around eating and food. So you see, it's what we eat as well. It's our boys. But and another thing the second house is family. I know the fourth house is family as well, but always look at the second house as family. And you'll find that everything to do with your early childhood experiences reflect how you associate with family. So I'm giving you that's one house. One thing that I think is phenomenal is about the 12th house. Did you ever look at the 12th house as being foreign countries or foreigners?
No, definitely not.
Absolutely is. And when Jupiter transits your 12th house, you will travel to more foreign countries than any other time. At least I know I did for sure. And all of my clients revealed the same thing. It's amazing. So the 12th house, because I always used to call the 12th house our escape from the world. Because every aspect of the 12th house is an escape from this world, whether it's a prison, a hospital, death, sleep. Did you know the 12th house deals with our sleep? So those were all ways we escape the world. And when we travel to foreign countries, we're escaping our world. So this is, I have to make everything make sense from, life's experiences. So I always tell all my students that the houses are the most important thing, because when you understand the houses, you understand the stage and the foundation that all the planets sit in or perform in, really. So that's the basics, when you can really understand the houses. And of course, the planet that rules a house, so many people say, well, I don't have any planets in this house. What does that mean? The planet that rules that house, wherever it goes and how it's associated with other planets, tells the picture of what that house will produce in your life. That's the same in Western. But as I'm saying this, I could never get the house rulers to work in Western, but it works absolutely divinely perfectly in the Vedic chart. So that was a big thing that helped me, because I used to actually teach and do Uranian astrology, all the midpoints and, the trans-Neptunian planets, all of that. I used to actually teach that. I used to have an astrology center in the early 90s. And that was the closest thing I could get to prediction being more precise. But it was like finding a needle in the haystack. There were so many variables, so many midpoints. I was like, how can we simplify and make this cleaner? And believe it or not, with all the nakshatras and all the complication that you think Vedic's about, once you really learn it, it's a cleaner, more precise system. And I'll tell you another reason why. You don't have all those intercepted houses. You know which planet rules each house.
Yeah.
Well,
so in I hear what you're saying about trying to mesh systems together, because I know there's certain traditional techniques, for example, that require you to use whole sign, house system, and so sometimes people try to use Placidus or some other sort of house system, but use the technique, and it's like it actually doesn't work because it wasn't created that way. That isn't the lens through which it was created, so you kind of can't. But what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you are an astrologer who is very interested in being able to make accurate predictions, if you love the house-based analysis, like you really want to use the houses as a big foundation of your practice, and then you mentioned something about it being more spiritually based, which we haven't gotten into very much. But if that is sort of what you love about astrology, that you might want to check out the Vedic system, because there may be things in there that make your astrology even more accurate.
Absolutely. You nailed it.
Okay. And what would you say? I mean, you said in the beginning that the Western astrology is a little more psychological in its orientation, and that the Vedic is more spirituality based. What do you mean by that?
Well, stepping back just a little bit, here's what's interesting about Vedic. They look at the signs not as personality. Now, I can't get over that because I was a Western astrologer, so I still do that. Yeah. But they look at the signs as whether it gives strength or weakness to planets. So in other words, when you're in a dasha or you're in a transit, whether that planet will deliver results. So they're not looking at personality. They're looking at, well, you've got Jupiter in Capricorn. Jupiter in Capricorn, it's a debilitation. So Jupiter's weak. Jupiter rules children in a chart. And if you've got Jupiter in Capricorn, that's one strike against having children. Now, I know many people with Jupiter in Capricorn with children, so that's not it. But you have to find a continual, just like in Western astrology, these things that add up. If Jupiter's debilitated, if it's with a malefic, if your ruler of the 5th house goes to the 8th house, you find where you have, like, as the ancients would say, that they're what did they call it? It's something like, not just malefic, it's this terrible word that it's destroyed. In other words, when you
debilitated, the debilitated word.
No, there's a word that they use that it's like destroyed, but
Okay.
it's an English word. It's not a Vedic word. It's actually, I'll think of it in a minute. It's actually from Western astrology, I think. But still, it's like when this planet repeatedly has difficult things, it's aspected by 3 malefics, or another thing is it's hemmed in. In other words, a hemming in means you have a malefic on both sides of the planet. That planet can't operate the way it normally does. So whatever it rules is kind of, weakened. So they look at planets as weaknesses or strengths. And if you have a planet that's really strong, such as, let's say, Jupiter's exalted, that means it's in Cancer, and it is aspected by positive planets, giving it more strength, it's in a positive house, then that planet's going to deliver results such as children. And another dimension to Vedic astrology, which seems so complicated, at least it did for me when I first started, was we have the divisional charts. And there's mathematical formulas for this. And really, when I discovered the math behind it all, I realized how precise this system is. So it's like the Navamsha chart, how it's calculated from the birth chart. The Navamsha chart is called D9. And really, believe it or not, you think D9 is going to have qualities of the 9th house, but it's more than that. The Navamsha chart is what we are continually evolving and becoming. And the Navamsha chart is a chart that will reflect your spirituality. And here's my philosophy. I believe your birth chart, whether it's Western or Vedic, is a sum accumulation of everything you've been and are from your past. And that includes past lives. So it's another reason that brought me to Vedic. I believe in reincarnation. And I believe, that your horoscope, your chart, is a sum accumulation of everything you've been before. So if you have these terrible debilitated planets, it was something that you brought with you from a past life. But I believe, different than all the, negative Vedic astrologers, and that's where it gets a bad rap from India. All they want to concentrate on, that you can't change, this is your destiny, and, too bad, you're going to die at this age and all this. I disagree wholeheartedly, because what's the purpose if everything was predestined? So your chart is telling you what you are here to work on. And if you become conscious and aware, and that is through, conscious awareness, working on yourself, we've got to really look at who's caused the misery in your life. You have, not the outside world or other people. So if you take ownership to understand what you have done, your chart's going to tell you how you can change that, what the issue is, what planets are weakened from all your past doings. But you have to know how you can change that. Especially, I have so many people call me for relationship stuff, when am I going to find somebody? When am I going to get married? And they've had terrible, terrible past relationships. Well, it's always like, I had somebody yesterday or today had the ruler of the 7th house, right? Marriage, the planet that ruled the 7th house, in the 8th house which that's always really difficult for marriage. And it was conjunct Rahu, which Rahu, by the way, is the north node of the moon, and Ketu is the south node of the moon. But they're malefic in Vedic. Either one are going to cause issues and problems. Although Rahu usually is growth and expansion, Ketu is usually very spiritual, but it deals with, losses. What happens when we go through a great loss? We understand what happened and we grow through it. If there's a conscious awareness in the individual, instead of being a victim and saying, oh, my life's terrible, it's never going to get better. That's actually Ketu's energy, to be a victim. But it is also the energy of spirituality and intuition and insightfulness. So there's two ways that these planets can be viewed, but you've got to look at the chart as, what is it I need to do to change myself to grow and heal my life? That's what the spirituality is for me and what I look for in Vedic astrology.
I'm so glad you touched on some of those points, because I would say that my own bias or stereotype about Vedic astrology is that it's sort of more deterministic,
yes,
and sometimes fear-based and a little bit
right. Absolutely, you're right. And I want people to know that's not what we're supposed to do with astrology. That is so negative. Astrology is for self-development and healing and growth. That's what we use it for. So we've got to see, what is the chart directing us? I always look at, what is somebody's best assets in their chart? What are their gifts? What are their goals? Focus their attention on that, and the negative will go away, because they're not focusing on all the hardships. And if you go get your chart read in India, they probably will focus on the negative. I've been there, done that. But that's not the truth. And they'll say, oh, you're going to die on this day. You know what my answer is to that? With all the medical changes that we have made, think of all the people, if we didn't have chemotherapy or open heart surgery, that wouldn't be here today. So maybe their chart, they could have died without any intervention with modern medicine or any of the healing techniques we have. Maybe they would have died on that day, because maybe they would have gotten strep throat and there was no antibiotics. We have antibiotics today. So it is, people do not die, and I do not ever predict death, because we have free will to change those dates by working on ourselves.
Joni, you brought up the Nakshatras before, and we've had we've dabbled in that here at Astrology Hub, and we've had a mastery class on it, and there's been some learning. What is it? Can you explain it again? And then, why doesn't Western astrology use it? Is it because Western astrology is that solar based and the Nakshatras is lunar based? Is that why?
Well, Nakshatras are really about the stars and the star groupings, okay? And where they've moved to is very different, such as, Ardra. I don't know if you watched any of my videos about right before the pandemic. I said something horrible is going to happen that's going to change the world. And I was at a conference, at the NCGR conference, and I got up there. I was asked to do the predictions with two other people. And a lot of people say, you're so negative. I said, I'm sorry, this is what I see every 18 and a half years. When Rahu goes into a certain nakshatra in Ketu, they're always opposite, as you well know. But whenever Rahu goes into Gemini, in the nakshatra Ardra, which symbol is a teardrop, by the way, and Ketu goes into the nakshatra opposite that, which is Mula, which is close to the galactic center, which is in Sagittarius. Look and see what's happened every 18 and a half years. Now, Rahu and Ketu, North Node and South Node, they're always deterministic of our fate and our destiny. Just think of how important what they are. They create eclipses, right? Because they're the points where the moon hits the ecliptic, or I'm sorry, the ecliptic of the sun. But this is so important. So think about this. So I was ranting and raving that something huge is going to happen because 18 and a half years ago, when we had Rahu in Gemini and Ketu in Sag, was 9/11. Okay, we all know what happened in 2001. Go back 18 and a half years from that, and you'll come to 82. We had the AIDS virus that, covered the world. Then if you go back 18 and a half years, because that's how long it takes Rahu and Ketu, right, to go through all 12 signs of the zodiac. So every 18 and a half years, you're going to get these cycles. So go back to the last time before the early 80s, and you're going to come to 1963. And that was the Kennedy assassination. So one more, I'll go back 18 and a half years from that, and you get the bombing of Hiroshima. Do you get my point? So it's when the planets go through certain nakshatras and signs that create this big predictive movement that I can see with Vedic astrology. Now, I must say, I thought because 9/11 was, this terrorist attack, I thought it was going to be another terrorist type attack. Mm-hmm. But essentially, this virus was a terrorist attack. Yeah. And it's killed more people than any of the previous events. So I'm telling people, and is that fatalistic? Well, it really does deal with when you're looking at world prediction, the consciousness on the planet. Are we going to overcome the catastrophes that Rahu and Ketu bring when they're in these signs and nakshatras? Mm-hmm. I think not. We have a long ways to go.
When you were looking at 2020, were you also looking at Saturn and Pluto conjunction? Like, does Vedic, because I know Vedic is more focused on the 7 visible planets, correct? Right. So when you're looking at your predictions, are you also bringing in the outer planets?
Well, I mean, that adds to it. Absolutely. Yeah. That adds to it. Yes. But, I think it's like 38, 39, when they come back to those positions again, that time looks really severe. So I can't imagine. I was hoping that consciousness would evolve and get better on this planet. And I'm still hoping and praying for that. So, but yeah, I mean, all of it adds up. Saturn and Jupiter were together, and Pluto. I mean, think about it. That was Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter all together around that time. That was intense. And I also always look at Jupiter and Saturn as the social planets. They really do dictate what's going on socially around the world, and that deals with the economy. So their relationship to one another, Jupiter and Saturn, will dictate what's going on in the stock market, in the economy, in the world. So all the planets serve a purpose, and you can't just isolate one thing. A true astrologer is going to look at everything, as you noted.
Well, and I just love all the different ways the universe is speaking to us. And it's like whichever way we turn the kaleidoscope, we're going to be able to get the information that we need at the time when we need it. And so even if someone listening to this is like, wow, I think I'm ready to go and explore Vedic astrology, it's like, well, you are ready for a different lens. And even when people have things that happen where it's like, God, well, my whole chart changed, or I found a new birth time. And so I've just realized that I've been attached to a chart that's actually not right. I always think, well, geez, that's just the moment that's perfect in time when you're ready for a new perspective of yourself, and doesn't make everything else wrong. Within the astrological community, there's always these arguments. It's like this house system or that house system, or this type of astrology or that type. And there's always this infighting of like, who's right and who's wrong. And what I love about what you've been sharing with us here today is it's really a yes and. And so I'd love to hear your perspective. I'm sure you have to face this a lot. We do. Even sometimes we'll post things on social media and people will say, Western astrology is not right because it's not actually based on the stars. And so I'd love to hear what you say when things like this come up.
Well, I definitely have this all the time. Someone saying this one's right, this one's wrong. And there's no such thing, because they both have their credibility based on different reasons. And I just feel like I have the credibility to say which one's right or wrong. Why? Because I've done Western for 20 years and I've done Vedic for 20 years. And my take on that is they're both accurate. They both work. I have the right to be able to say that because I've done both. When somebody says Vedic astrology is wrong and they've never practiced it, it's as bad as somebody saying astrology's hogwash, but they don't know what it is. They've never practiced it. It's the same thing. So I feel like I have the right to judge it just because I've done both, and they both work. Please, they both work. And I definitely avoid all those arguments. And yeah, everybody's always wanting to prove Vedic astrology from the Western communities wrong. And likewise, just as guilty, the Vedic astrologers are trying to prove Western astrology wrong. Why are we fighting? You know what they say in the Course in Miracles? My husband always tells me this all the time. Would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? You know, let it go. It just gives you a different perspective. It gives you more. Human beings are so deep and complicated.
Yes.
It's not just what we see from the Western chart. It's also the spiritual deepness from the Vedic chart. And, you know, and going back to your question about the Nakshatras, there's 27 of them, but originally there was 28. So, you know, we whittled it down to 27. But that's in India relative to the lunar calendar, you know, the woman's cycle, the moon. And actually in India, each month is named after a nakshatra according to where the moon is full. So where the moon is full, whatever nakshatra it's in, that's the name of their month. So based on their lunar calendar, instead of the Gregorian calendar that we have here, which I don't see how that, I think that's got to be pretty flawed when we had Augustus and Julius just decide they want summer months. So, you know.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, exactly. Are the houses still, or are the signs and the houses, is it still 30 degrees? Is it still based on?
Yes.
And so the starting point, that's really what changes it, because the constellations themselves are different sizes. They're not all 30 degrees. So it's really what you're talking about is the starting point of the zodiac. And it starts with which fixed star? Which one?
The starting part,
like Pisces at 6 degrees. What is that aligned with?
Well, I'd say that it's you mean the nakshatra, because
no, just this is the wheel, like the beginning of the wheel at Pisces. What is that? Because I know the beginning of the wheel at Aries 0 is based on the equinox in tropical. So what is the Pisces beginning based on?
Well, it's always changing, though. It's not just going to be there at 6 degrees, you know.
Okay. So it's
in another 72 years, it'll be 5 degrees. It's always constantly moving, and it takes 26,000 years for the whole precessional cycle to go through all 12 signs. And of course, you know, what ages we're in are vitally important. I think it's so interesting. You know, we're in the Piscean age, and it initiated with the birth of Christ. And, you know, what is the symbol for Christianity and all the churches that were built? The fish. So, you know, that started the Piscean era, but we're looking towards going into the Aquarian era. So really what you're talking about, the starting reference point of the zodiac, it's constantly changing, and we're going towards the age of Aquarius. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Another question for you. Are the angles as important in Vedic astrology? So the angles, you know, the equinox and the solstice making basically a cross, and any planets that you have at the angles are kind of more pronounced. Is that different in Vedic because it's not based on the equinox and solstice?
Well, you know, I always look at the midhaven and, of course, the nadir. It's not necessarily calculated in most of the charts, but the program I have will put the MC. And, of course, you know, the nadir is exactly opposite. But in Vedic, it's interesting because we use whole sign houses, correct? So if your ascendant is like my ascendant is 27 degrees of Gemini, you know, even though that's my rising degree, it sits within the first house. So actually, you know, from 0 degrees to 27 is still in the first house. Now, my mind, I can't wrap my mind around that because I'm thinking it could be in the 12th house, right?
Yeah.
But I kind of bear that in mind only because I've done Western astrology and I know it's kind of behind the ascendant rather in front of the ascendant. But it really does work. Don't ask me how, but it really does work that that entire house will be your first house, even though the degree could be in a late degree instead of an early degree. So is that kind of makes sense of what you were talking about a little bit?
Yeah.
But you're talking about the angles, which I know you're talking about the MC and the Nager and the ascendant and the descendant. So I'd have to say that I look at that, but if you really want to think about house cusp, because everything's equal house, every 27 degrees would be the heart and soul of each house, you know, like the angle more or less. So it's equal. Okay. Does that make sense?
Fascinating. Yes, it does. And so for anybody who is like, gosh, I just kind of want to see what my chart looks like in Vedic astrology, do most of the like free at Astro Dienst and, you know, astro.com, do most of them offer the option to like put your birth information in and run a Vedic chart?
Yes, yes. Solar fire, you can just change it to sidereal and Lahiri. There's, you know, just like in Western, we got different ones like Placidus, Coke.
Yes.
There's different ones, but 80% of 90% of people use Lahiri. So change it to Lahiri, sidereal, and equal house. And you should have your Vedic chart. There's also an option where you can use the Sri Pati house system, which will put the house, it actually puts it back to the Placidus system, where planets will change houses according to Placidus. But, you know, I find that just make it pure, make it simple, make it easy, less complicated, and you'll get the right answer. And that's basically what we're doing with any astrology, right? Besides going into all this high-tech stuff, we just want our answers about our life. What are the trends and the cycles I'm looking forward to? What can I do to make the best benefit of this, or to avoid or avert difficulty through changing myself, my mind, my consciousness? This is what it's really for. So don't forget what it's supposed to be used for. And, you know, all of this arguing, is this wrong? Is this right? Stop it. Whatever gives you your answers, work with it.
Exactly. I love that, Joni. Okay. One more question. When people talk about sidereal astrology, are they talking about Vedic astrology? Are they interchangeable, or does it not necessarily mean the same thing?
It doesn't necessarily mean the same thing, because you can have a sidereal astrologer that is not working with the Nakshatras or the Doshas. That's what's indigenous to Vedic, the Nakshatras and the Doshas. And the Doshas are calculated from what nakshatra your moon's in. That's why I say that. And another thing that we're trained to do is to look at the chart from, we call it Chandra Lagna. Lagna means the ascendant. So Chandra is moon. So you make the moon the ascendant. And I tell all of my students, this is so vitally important. You look at your chart from the ascendant, the rising sign based on your time, but don't forget to look at the entire chart, processing it with house rulers and everything as the moon being used as the ascendant. So if somebody doesn't have their birth time and you know that they're born on a particular, you know, within a 6-hour radius or something to that effect, you know, in other words, if you know where the moon is, what sign the moon's in, you can use the moon as the ascendant. And it is fabulous how it works. Actually, in India, they tell you to look at the transiting planets from the moon before the ascendant. And when you really train yourself to do that, the results are astounding. That's why you'll hear me in my videos when I tell people, you know, about the transits coming up. Look from the moon and your ascendant. Very important. And when I was working with Western astrology and I used to write for all those magazine articles, the sun sign astrology, what do? We make the sun the ascendant, and where all the transit planets are based on where your sun is as the ascendant. Because, when people are reading a magazine about their astrology signs, trust me, they don't know what time they're born or where their moon is. They're going to base everything on the sun. So I'm a Virgo. So they start reading from, you make Virgo the ascendant and where all the transits are. And it worked beautifully. Same with Vedic. We work with the moon, but actually there's something called the Sudarshan chart, which is actually when you get the same results from the ascendant, the moon, and the sun, with 100% accuracy that something's going to happen. Now, do I do that? No, I just look at the ascendant and the moon. That's enough.
Joni, thank you so much for sharing all this. It's incredible to just dive into the differences, the similarities, when you might want to use one, when you might want to use another. If you orient with a certain type of astrology, this one might be for you. It's amazing to me that there's so many paths to truth.
Yes.
That there is not just one way. And when we get into these arguments about, well, this one's better and this one's better and this one works, it's like, well, they all work in different circumstances and they all work depending on what you want to get out of it. Why are you using it? Exactly. So I think you've given us some great reasons here today for why people may want to explore the Vedic astrology and the sidereal chart and all of it. So Thank you for that. I know that you do have a school that people, if they are interested in learning Vedic astrology, they can go to, right?
Right. It's called the University of Vedic Astrology. And it's a self-paced course. It usually takes, if somebody takes their time, it takes about a year. And we have live webinars every week. It has 40 recorded videos. And after each video, you take a test and you will have an assigned tutor that's a graduate of the university that will grade your tests, answer questions. And we also have a Telegram group that all gets together and talks. And we have research groups, such as there's a wonderful research group on medical astrology. So it is a whole community. I've been doing this for about almost 10 years. And we have a huge community. Most of the people that come in are Western astrologers. And the book that I use, so if y'all want to book, I actually have it here. This is my original workbook, and it's the book. See, it's, I don't know, is it?
Oh, that's nice. Okay, so I'm going to read it because there's people listening. You said Eastern astrology for the Western mind.
Exactly. So it's meant to be a bridge, because coming from Western astrology, I couldn't understand any of the Indian books. So I created my own that was more understandable for the Western mind. But it's my textbook for my university. Some other things that we have going, which is really cool, is I started an online magazine called Joni Patry's Astrology Insights. It's only $9.99 a month, and we interview a famous astrologer or somebody every month, or metaphysician. And this next month, we actually have a Western astrologer, Pam Gregory, that's going to be on the cover. It's kind of like Time magazine. I do too. And the astrologer is going to be on the cover, and it just gives an account of their whole life, what brought them to everything. It's so interesting. So I have my magazine, I have my books. I've written 10 books. My last 3 were Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. I have an app, and it's Joni Patry's Daily Astrology. The other things is I have classes that I had a class that I thought was one of my best classes. All day workshop, 2 days on Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and it's all recorded. You can actually purchase that on my website. And I have a free chart calculator. If you can't find any other way to calculate your Vedic chart, you can go onto my website, which is galacticcenter.org, not .com, .org. And And another thing is I have these series of shooting stars where it's people that aren't necessarily astrologers, but we talk about the spirituality and how we can change. Actually, it's much about the law of attraction. So I have tons of classes going. And of course, don't forget my YouTube channel that I film for all the time. And that's my name, Joni Patry. Everything's on my website.
Perfect. Yes. Awesome. And Joni is tireless. I mean, it's amazing. You're prolific. You are doing so much work. Thank you for all the work that you do for astrology and for all the people that are, seeking and curious and wanting to learn. I really appreciate it. I'm like in awe of the amount of content that you have created, that you continue to create. Just want to thank you for doing that. And for any of you out there who like this idea of multiple perspectives of astrology, you like hearing from different astrologers, and you're not yet a member of our Cosmic Insider, that's our free newsletter that goes out every week, you'll get a roundup of all the different podcast episodes that we did the week before, plus a look at the weekly astrological weather. So lots of good stuff in that. That's free. That's astrologyhub.com/insider. And Joni, I just want to thank you. I'm so glad that we finally had an opportunity to do this. And, it was like, we kept trying. This has been in the works for a long time. And we finally made it happen. Yay.
Well, everything happens for a reason. So now's the time it's supposed to happen. And with all that's going on astrologically, of course, it's the time.
Feels perfect. Thank you. Woo, big, huge gust of wind. I don't know if you can hear that. Thank you so much, Joni. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of our community. And thank you, as always, for making astrology a part of your life. I'll catch you on the next episode. My first astrology reading literally changed my life. I was in the midst of a significant dark night of the soul, and that reading gave me the hope and confidence that I needed to continue on my path, no matter how challenging things were. I've had the pleasure of seeing the impact that a high-quality reading can have on thousands of our community members. This is why we at Astrology Hub have been working so hard to create a platform where you can find and book astrology readings with the most trusted and experienced astrologers in the world. We've created a new platform called Astrologer Connect, and we've been testing it with our Inner Circle members with great success. So I'm inviting you to get on the waitlist now so you can be first to book when we do open the platform. You can go to astrologyhub.com/readings and secure your spot today. I can't wait to hear your story after you've had the chance to consult with one of our amazing astrologers, many of whom you've met here on the podcast. Getting on the waitlist is completely free and it doesn't bind you to anything. Go to astrologyhub.com/readings today.